One of the clearest signs that a narcissist is still obsessed with you is that they continue finding ways to monitor your life long after the relationship, friendship, or connection has ended. Most people assume that when someone leaves, blocks you, or claims they are finished with you, they move on and focus on their own future. But with a narcissist, the situation is often very different. What they say and what they actually do can be two completely separate realities. They may publicly act as if they don't care, yet privately spend an incredible amount of time gathering information about you. The reason this happens is simple. A narcissist struggles with losing access to someone who once provided them with attention, validation, emotional reactions, or a sense of control. Even when they choose to walk away, they often cannot tolerate the idea that your life continues without them. They want to know where you are, what you are doing, who you are talking to, and whether you are thinking about them. Information becomes a substitute for connection. If they cannot have direct access to you, they will often settle for indirect access. This monitoring behavior rarely looks obvious in the beginning. It can be subtle and carefully hidden. They may repeatedly view your social media stories without interacting. They may use alternate accounts to watch your content. They may suddenly reconnect with mutual friends and relatives they showed little interest in before. They might casually ask questions that seem innocent on the surface, but are actually designed to gather intelligence about your current life. Every small detail becomes valuable because it helps them maintain a sense of connection and awareness. Many people mistakenly interpret this behavior as love. It isn't. Genuine love respects boundaries and wishes the other person well, even from a distance. Obsession is different. Obsession needs access. It needs updates. It needs reassurance that the person hasn't completely escaped its influence. A narcissist may convince themselves that they are simply curious, but the intensity of that curiosity often reveals something deeper. They are emotionally attached to the idea of knowing what is happening in your world. What makes this behavior particularly revealing is that it often continues even when they appear happy with someone else. They may enter a new relationship, present a perfect image online, and tell everyone they have moved on. Yet somehow, they still know details about your life that should be impossible for them to know. They know where you traveled. They know about your achievements. They know when your relationship status changes. They know things because they are still paying attention. The most telling part is that monitoring gives them a feeling of psychological control. As long as they can observe you, they feel connected to the story. They feel like they still have a seat in your life, even if that seat exists only in their imagination. The moment they stop monitoring is often the moment they truly let go. Until then, every search, every question, every hidden glance is evidence that your presence continues to occupy space in their mind far more than they would ever admit. One of the most confusing behaviors a narcissist displays is the pattern of disappearing completely and then suddenly reaching out as if nothing happened. Weeks, months, or even years can pass without a single message, and just when you believe they have finally moved on, a text appears, a social media interaction happens, or an unexpected call arrives. To someone unfamiliar with narcissistic behavior, this can seem random or even sincere. In reality, it often reveals that they have never fully let go of their psychological attachment to you. Silence is not always the same as moving on. For many narcissists, silence is a strategy rather than a conclusion. During these periods, they may be focused on other sources of attention, validation, or control. They may be involved in new relationships, new social circles, or new opportunities that temporarily occupy their focus. Because of this, they can appear completely detached. They stop contacting you, stop responding, and create the impression that you no longer matter. This apparent indifference can be convincing because it feels so absolute. But beneath the surface, the story is often different. A narcissist frequently keeps a mental inventory of people who have played important roles in their life. They may not think about these individuals every day, but they rarely forget them entirely. Instead, they view them as potential sources of emotional attention that can be revisited whenever the need arises. This is why sudden contact often appears without warning and without any logical reason. The message itself is usually designed to seem casual. It may be a simple "How have you been?" or a comment about a memory from the past. Sometimes it is disguised as concern, curiosity, or friendliness. Other times it is so small that it seems meaningless. What matters is not the content of the message, but the fact that contact has been reestablished. The narcissist is testing a psychological connection. They want to see whether they still have access to your attention and emotions. What makes this behavior particularly revealing is the timing. Sudden contact often occurs when they experience boredom, loneliness, rejection, insecurity, or disappointment elsewhere in their life. They may have lost another source of validation. They may be facing personal struggles. They may simply want reassurance that their influence over you still exists. Reaching out becomes a way of checking whether the door remains open. This creates a powerful emotional effect on the recipient. The silence causes uncertainty, and the unexpected contact reignites old emotions. Questions immediately arise. Why are they contacting me now? What do they want? Have they changed? Are they thinking about me? The narcissist may never answer these questions directly because the ambiguity itself serves a purpose. It keeps your attention focused on them. Another important detail is that the cycle often repeats. After making contact, they may disappear again just as suddenly as they returned. Once they receive the emotional response they were seeking, their urgency fades. They withdraw until another moment arrives when they desire attention, reassurance, or control. Then the pattern begins again. Silence is followed by contact. Contact is followed by silence. This push and pull dynamic reveals an important truth. People who are genuinely finished with a relationship usually allow the connection to remain in the past. They do not repeatedly reopen doors they have chosen to close. When someone consistently alternates between complete silence and sudden reappearance, it often suggests that the emotional attachment remains unresolved and that your presence continues to occupy a place in their thoughts that they cannot entirely release. One of the most revealing signs that a narcissist is still obsessed with you is the way they react when they see you succeeding. Success has a unique effect on people. Healthy individuals often feel inspired by it, happy for you, or indifferent if they have moved on with their own lives. A narcissist, however, may respond in ways that seem surprisingly intense, especially when they once believed they had power, influence, or control over you. Your growth becomes more than just a personal achievement. It becomes a challenge to the story they created about who you are and what role you should play in their life. Many narcissists leave relationships expecting to remain psychologically important. They assume that the person they left behind will struggle, miss them, or remain emotionally attached for a long time. This belief helps protect their ego because it allows them to feel significant and irreplaceable. When reality begins to contradict that belief, it can create a deep sense of discomfort. Seeing you become stronger, happier, more confident, or more successful forces them to confront a possibility they do not like. Your life may actually be improving without them. This is why news of your success often captures their attention immediately. Whether it is a career achievement, financial improvement, personal transformation, new relationship, business accomplishment, or emotional healing, they may react in ways that seem disproportionate to the situation. Even if they never contact you directly, they often become highly interested in gathering details. They want to know how it happened, who helped you, and whether your success is genuine or temporary. In some cases, the reaction appears as jealousy. The narcissist may minimize your accomplishments, criticize them, or suggest they are not as impressive as they seem. Rather than celebrating your progress, they search for flaws. This behavior is not really about the achievement itself. It is about protecting their self-image. If your success becomes undeniable, they may feel threatened because it challenges the idea that they were always superior, more capable, or more important. Sometimes the reaction takes a different form. Instead of openly criticizing you, they suddenly attempt to reconnect. They may send friendly messages, congratulate you, or act interested in your life again. To an outside observer, this might look supportive, but often the timing reveals the true motivation. They were absent during your struggles, your healing process, and the difficult work required to reach your goals. Yet the moment success becomes visible, they reappear. Their renewed interest is not necessarily about supporting your growth. It is about reconnecting themselves to something valuable. A narcissist may also become competitive. Rather than focusing on their own path, they feel compelled to prove they are doing better than you. Social media posts become more frequent. Achievements are exaggerated. Success stories suddenly appear everywhere. The goal is often to restore a sense of superiority. Your accomplishments create an internal comparison they cannot ignore, and they feel pressure to regain the upper hand. Perhaps the most telling reaction occurs when your success includes emotional freedom. Material achievements can attract attention, but genuine happiness often affects them even more. When they see that you are no longer defined by the relationship, no longer seeking their approval, and no longer emotionally dependent on their presence, they realize something important has changed. The influence they once held is weakening. The version of you they expected to remain stuck in the past is disappearing. That realization can trigger curiosity, frustration, jealousy, or unexpected attempts to re-enter your life because your success represents something they never wanted to witness. Proof that you were capable of thriving without them, growing beyond their expectations, and creating a future that no longer revolves around their presence. One of the strongest indications that a narcissist is still obsessed with you is when they continue bringing up your name in conversations long after the relationship or connection has ended. Most people gradually stop talking about someone once they have emotionally processed the experience and moved on. The person becomes a chapter in the past rather than a recurring topic in the present. A narcissist, however, often struggles to let go in the same way. Even when they claim they are over you, your name continues to appear in places where it no longer needs to be. This behavior can take many forms. Sometimes, mutual friends mention that the narcissist was talking about you. Other times, people unexpectedly report comments they made about your life, your personality, or your relationship history. You may discover that conversations you thought were long finished are still being discussed months or even years later. The frequency of these mentions often reveals something important. People rarely spend time discussing someone who occupies no space in their mind. What makes this behavior particularly interesting is that the comments are not always positive or negative. Some narcissists criticize you repeatedly, while others praise you in certain situations. Some alternate between both extremes depending on the audience and their current emotional state. The common factor is not the content of the conversation, but the fact that the conversation keeps happening at all, whether they are defending themselves, criticizing you, comparing others to you, or retelling stories from the past. They are still mentally revisiting the connection. For a narcissist, talking about you often serves a psychological purpose. It allows them to maintain a sense of relevance and control over the narrative. Relationships are not always remembered accurately by narcissists because their recollections are often filtered through the need to protect their self-image. By repeatedly discussing you with others, they can shape the story in a way that supports how they want to be seen. They may portray themselves as the victim, the hero, the misunderstood partner, or the person who was unfairly treated. The details may change, but the need to keep the story alive remains. Another reason they continue mentioning you is that they are searching for information. Conversations become opportunities to gather updates without contacting you directly. They may ask subtle questions disguised as casual curiosity. They may pretend not to care while carefully listening for every detail. Through mutual acquaintances, social circles, or family connections, they attempt to maintain awareness of what is happening in your life. The fact that they continue seeking information reveals that their interest has not disappeared. Sometimes the mentions become even more revealing when they compare other people to you. They may talk about how someone reminds them of you or how a new relationship differs from the one they had with you. This comparison indicates that you remain a psychological reference point. Even if they are trying to convince others that they have moved forward, their repeated comparisons suggest that part of their attention remains anchored in the past. There is also an emotional component to this behavior. Mentioning you allows them to relive the emotions connected to the relationship. Whether those emotions involve admiration, resentment, regret, anger, pride, or disappointment, the conversation keeps the psychological connection active. Every story retold is another moment spent thinking about you. Every discussion is another reminder that the chapter has not been fully closed in their mind. The most revealing aspect is that people who have genuinely detached emotionally rarely feel compelled to keep someone's name circulating through their social environment. They may remember the person occasionally, but they do not repeatedly return to the topic. When a narcissist continues bringing you into conversations, continues revisiting old stories, and continues ensuring your name remains present in discussions long after the connection ended, it often reflects an ongoing fixation that exists beneath the surface, regardless of how indifferent they may appear in public. One of the more subtle signs that a narcissist is still obsessed with you is their tendency to create situations that appear accidental but feel strangely intentional. On the surface, these encounters may seem like coincidences. You run into them at a place you frequently visit. They suddenly appear at events connected to your interests. They engage with something online that seems unrelated but somehow places them directly in your awareness. Individually, each incident might seem harmless, but when these moments begin happening repeatedly, a pattern starts to emerge that is difficult to ignore. A narcissist often struggles with the idea of completely losing access to someone who once played an important role in their emotional world. Direct contact may not always be possible, especially if boundaries have been established or communication has ended. As a result, indirect contact becomes an alternative. Rather than openly reaching out, they place themselves in positions where interaction can occur naturally. This allows them to maintain plausible deniability while still satisfying their desire to remain connected to your life. What makes these encounters effective is that they create uncertainty. If they send a direct message, their intentions are obvious. If they happen to appear in the same place as you, however, the situation becomes more ambiguous. They can claim it was a coincidence. They can act surprised. They can behave as though fate simply brought the two of you together. Yet the frequency and timing of these encounters often tell a different story. Sometimes this behavior occurs in physical spaces. A narcissist may begin visiting locations they know are important to you. They may attend events they previously showed little interest in. They may reconnect with social groups, hobbies, or activities that provide opportunities for crossing paths. While they may never admit their motivation, the pattern often suggests a deliberate effort to remain visible. In today's digital world, accidental encounters frequently happen online as well. They may suddenly start viewing your stories after months of silence. They might like an old post, leave a vague comment, or interact with mutual friends in ways that ensure their presence appears in your digital environment. These actions are often small enough to avoid confrontation, but noticeable enough to remind you that they are still there. The psychological purpose behind these encounters is often deeper than simple curiosity. A narcissist wants to know whether they still have an emotional effect on you. Seeing your reaction provides valuable information. Do you seem nervous, happy, uncomfortable, indifferent? Every response becomes data. Even a brief interaction can reassure them that they still occupy space in your thoughts. Another reason these encounters occur is that narcissists often enjoy maintaining a sense of influence. If they can unexpectedly appear in your world, they create the impression that they are never entirely gone. This can disrupt your sense of closure and keep the psychological connection active. The uncertainty itself becomes part of the dynamic. You may begin wondering whether future encounters are truly accidental or carefully arranged, and that question keeps your attention focused on them. What makes this behavior especially revealing is that it frequently continues even when there is no practical reason for contact. The relationship may be over. Communication may have ended long ago. Both lives may have moved in different directions. Yet, opportunities for crossing paths continue to emerge. The persistence of these moments often suggests that the narcissist has not fully released their emotional investment. A person who has genuinely moved on typically respects distance and allows life to unfold naturally. They do not repeatedly position themselves near someone from their past without reason. When encounters keep occurring under circumstances that seem increasingly unlikely, it can indicate that the desire to remain connected, noticed, and remembered is still driving behavior beneath the surface, revealing an attachment that has not fully disappeared despite every claim that it has. One of the most powerful signs that a narcissist is still obsessed with you is their inability to stop controlling the story of what happened between the two of you. Most people eventually reach a point where they accept the past, learn from it, and move forward. The details become less important with time because their focus shifts toward the future. A narcissist often struggles with this process because the story is not just a memory to them. It is deeply connected to their identity, reputation, and sense of control. As a result, they continue revisiting, rewriting, and managing the narrative long after the relationship has ended. This need for control often begins immediately after a breakup, conflict, or separation. Rather than allowing events to speak for themselves, the narcissist feels compelled to explain what happened to anyone willing to listen. They may present themselves as the victim, the hero, the misunderstood partner, or the person who was forced to make difficult choices. The exact version depends on what best protects their image at that moment. What remains consistent is their determination to shape how others perceive the situation. The reason this behavior matters is that people who are truly over a relationship rarely spend large amounts of time managing public opinion about it. Once they have emotionally detached, they have little need to keep defending their position or convincing others of their version of events. A narcissist, however, often continues this effort for months or even years because the story remains psychologically active in their mind. One common tactic is selective storytelling. They leave out details that make them look bad while emphasizing information that supports their preferred image. Conversations become carefully edited presentations rather than honest reflections. If someone challenges their version of events, they may become unusually defensive. This emotional intensity reveals that the issue is not merely about facts, it is about maintaining control over how the relationship is remembered. Another revealing behavior is their tendency to repeatedly revisit the same story. Even after significant time has passed, they continue bringing up old conflicts, old mistakes, and old grievances. They retell events to new audiences. They revisit conversations that should have lost their importance long ago. The repetition itself is significant because it demonstrates that the experience still occupies a meaningful amount of mental space. In some cases, a narcissist attempts to influence how mutual friends, family members, or social groups view you. They may subtly plant doubts, share negative interpretations, or present themselves as the reasonable party. This effort is often less about informing others and more about controlling perception. If they can shape how people see you, they feel as though they still maintain power over the situation. What makes this behavior particularly revealing is that it often continues even when there is nothing left to gain. The relationship is over, communication has ended, lives have moved in separate directions, yet the narcissist remains emotionally invested in controlling how the story is told. This ongoing effort suggests that the chapter has not truly closed for them. There is also a deeper psychological reason behind this obsession with the narrative. Accepting reality sometimes means accepting personal responsibility, acknowledging mistakes, or recognizing that someone has successfully moved on without them. These truths can threaten the narcissist's self-image. By constantly rewriting the story, they create a version of reality that feels safer and more flattering to their ego. The inability to stop managing, defending, explaining, and reshaping the narrative often reveals that the connection still holds emotional significance. When someone has genuinely moved on, they no longer need to control every interpretation of the past. When a narcissist continues fighting to own the story, influence opinions, and dictate how events are remembered, it often shows that they are still psychologically attached to the relationship and unwilling to surrender their need for influence over a chapter they claim is already finished.